So you'll likely get a notice on your computer that says acceptance for recording. Oh, but Tony, I love your background. Of course, it's perfect with your observatory. I love it. All right, so like I said, we're gonna go ahead and get started. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna share my screen and just kind of do a little bit of an intro for any folks who are new. And then I'm actually gonna turn it over to some other folks who are willing to share their time today and share their expertise. So actually, hold on one second. I think I can do this part and then the presentation. Whoops. Zoom is. I always forget how to do the presentation in Zoom. If not, that's right. We'll just do it the way it is. But the slideshow. There it is. All right. Oh, you all can't see it. Hold on. Oh, Zoom.
I know.
You'd think after all these years we'd figure it out, but I still can't. All right. Let me try it one more time. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry, people.
It's okay.
Where did my Zoom go? There you are. All right, that is not working. So I'm just going to share without actually doing in presentation form, but that's fine.
Sure.
All righty. All right, here we go. So for the folks that are new, welcome. Our organization is called Residents Working Against Huron River Flooding. So we try and have meetings every 3 or so months throughout the year. Give people a chance to kind of get to know us, see what we're up to, all the things going on. So some context for our organization is that we started back in the spring of 2020, and kind of what got us going is actually being part of and participating in the Thriving Earth Exchange, which they are an offshoot of the American Geological Union. And they actually partnered communities like ours with scientists. And so we've been working with Claire Zarakis. She is our community science fellow. So Claire is right here. And she's partnered us with multiple different scientists, including Dr. Wendy Robertson, Mr. Scott Dirks, Dr. Rod Lammers. We also have Miss Emma Geis. And what they do is they help us with various data collection to try and figure out what's going on with the flooding. So this all started in the context of working with them and getting the organization going. Myself, along with Diane Henry, we are up on the north side of Ore Lake. We started this organization, like I said, to figure out what's going on. Hamburg Township has done quite a bit of work at the lake and downstream, which is great, and we immensely appreciate it. And they continue to do so, which is wonderful. But there hasn't been a lot of effort and work looking at what's coming in upstream. And so this effort is to look at the upstream pieces. So we've been working with these hydrologists for the past few years. And now we have an opportunity to start also working with the Army Corps, which in a moment I'm going to turn it over to those folks. But just kind of some background real quick before we do it. For the folks that were here at the time, as a reminder, we did have a more recent flood in August. This flood actually was the 6th highest in history for this area. And so as a reminder, when you go to look at the flood levels, you can look at the gauge information through the U.S. Army Corps, through the USGS, the National Weather Service, and they post the river gauge. So here, if you look onto that website, you can go onto the link here. Again, this will all be shared on our website, so you have access afterward.
Recording in progress.
And some back sound.
Cool.
So when you go onto the website, what you're going to see is an image like this. And so the line here shows the river level, and it has different flood stages. And so what's considered minimum flood level or minor flood level for us at the moment is 7 feet. I just want to do a shout out to the whole community. Thank you to everyone on this call and everyone in the extended community, because we really had a really great effort in this recent flood to support one another. I got a number of calls and texts, and we tried to get the word out about like resources and support for one another. We did a really good job helping remind each other about the no wake on Ore Lake. It doesn't help with the river, which I know we're still trying to address it, and Carrie will talk about that later. But at least for Ore Lake, in one part of our community, we were able to minimize and actually pretty much prevent boat activity on the lake. So it prevented damage and other aspects going on, other issues on the lake. So just a big thank you to everyone for your participation and support in that. And then kind of other things that happened with the flood is anytime we have a high flood, we often have the news around. Myself and Carrie and Diane all ended up on the Channel 7 News. We were actually the main story, which was pretty exciting. Kind of continuing to get the word out about the flooding and all of those pieces to really try and get more information in the broader Metro Detroit, broader Michigan and beyond community about our flooding, because the more word we get out, the more attention we can get, the more we can work to actually try and figure out what's going on. So with that, when you talk about figuring out what's going on and such, as I mentioned, one of our opportunities to be able to work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So they are actually in the process of conducting a flood inundation study that looks at South Ore Creek and Dubrova Creek. So all that water coming in upstream of Ore Lake that then flows into the river. So it's impacting all of us really sitting on this call. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And we are lucky enough tonight to actually have folks from the Army Corps who are kind enough, truly kind enough, to take time out of their evening and actually come share the progress on it. So they've been collecting data throughout the spring, summer, and so they're here to kind of share how it's going, where it stands, and kind of next steps. Catherine, am I turning it over to you? Is that right? Oh, are you there? Oh, I can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Your microphone.
Can you guys hear me?
There you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, we actually don't usually use Zoom, so I have to use from the browser, and sometimes the settings get a little wonky. It's a government computer. They're all scared. You know, the Chinese are going to do something crazy with our computers, so we have
That's
to,
right.
you know. Okay, so let me try sharing my screen. Okay, can everyone see my presentation here?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. So I wasn't quite sure, who would be on the call and, what, level of technical knowledge we had. So this is pretty broad. And if anyone has any technical questions, I'm happy to take those, or just general questions. But just a heads up, it's geared towards just sort of a general overview of what I'm working on. So a little bit of a background, as was mentioned, the Corps came into this by conducting a study under what's called our Floodplain Management Services Authority to address flooding near Ore Lake. So the Floodplain Management Services Authority is 100% federally funded, where we go to communities who are having flooding issues and we study their problem. Now, we can't do any sort of construction under this authority, but if our study comes up with some suggestions as to construction of, some type of change, maybe to a culvert or, something like that, you could potentially apply under other authorities. And unfortunately, Garrett couldn't make it tonight, but he will have more. Garrett Ray is the project manager on this project, and he could direct you guys to other core projects if we get to the point where we propose constructing something and you guys want to investigate that further. But right now we're doing a study, and so what we're doing is constructing both hydrologic and hydraulic models for existing conditions first, and then we will model some alternatives to try to see if we could relieve different flooding problems near the lake. So I just want to do a real quick overview on, what is hydrology, what is hydraulics, what do these models tell us? So first, the hydrology model. So hope everyone remembers, elementary school, water cycle, it rains, the water falls, it runs off, goes to the river. We have a model that the Corps actually develops that's used throughout the world called HEC-HMS, and that takes your rainfall and it basically simulates the water cycle. So it can calculate infiltration, evaporation, off the land, and groundwater. And then it will estimate how much volume you're going to see at the outlet of your watershed. So you can split up your watershed at different points. You can get, flow at different points. And what we call this is we get hydrograph, which is how much flow is coming out of the watershed over time. So this the graph all the way on the right is a hydrograph, and you'll see there's a peak flow, and then that's a flow over time. So that's what the hydrology model gives us, is, how much flow is coming off the watershed. Then what we do is we take that and we construct a hydraulic model. And in this case, we're using a model called HEC-RAS, which is also constructed by the Corps. It is all these models are free. Anyone can download them. They're used throughout the world for all kinds of different purposes.
Can you see my text?
So for this model, what it is, HEC-RAS is basically a series of cross sections across the river in a floodplain used to represent how the water flows down the stream. So what you basically do is you take you can just use your peak flow. If you just want to see like worst case scenario, this is what FEMA has tended to do in the past, where they just want to see, okay, if we had that worst case peak flow at every point along a stretch of the river, where would the floodplain be? Because that's what they're trying to set, for insurance rates. But what we're looking to do is actually watch the flood wave come down. So we want to see, how does the water level change over time? In that case, you want to route the entire hydrograph through your model. So this is just a little bit of an example from a different model that I've done. This is not Ore Lake, but the graphics are already had them put together. So what you can see all the way on the right is what you'll see is a floodplain, all the blue shaded areas, and you can see an example of a cross section there. So when the hydraulic model is completed, it will show the extent of where the flooding is to be expected based on your flows and your terrain information, and then what elevation it gets to and how wide the floodplain is, and also the timing of everything.
Excellent.
So that's what hydraulics and hydrology models do overall. As for where we are at right now with your study, we've developed the hydrologic model for existing conditions. That's completed. We've done some basic verification against flows that Eagle has in their flood database, because there is not a USGS gauge in the watershed. We are using some other data sources to try to make sure that our flows are in the right realm. And that's the Eagle Flood Flow database. And now we just need to finish the report, and then we'll have someone in our office basically review the whole thing, and then that will be finalized. So I expect that to be probably hopefully the beginning of December. And I will have to say, and it's going to depend a little bit on what happens, sorry to say this, with the government shutdown next month. So we should have money to continue working on this, but yeah. So I'm going to hope by the beginning of December, but if anything happens next month after the continuing resolution runs out, there's a small chance it could impact the schedule. So just keep that in mind. So we're almost done with the hydrology, and then so that's good. And then we did go and collect survey back in July. We've received all of that. They had to do, some basic, take the survey, and then they do a little bit of processing, and then they give it to us. And so we got that back in July. And so we've been working on now constructing the hydraulic model for existing conditions. And we expect that to be drafted mid to late November. And then we'll also, of course, need to go through writing the draft report, and then also reviewing that through our official review process. And this is where we will plan to use some of your community collected water level data to help calibrate the hydraulic model. So we do have that, and we expect to use that at that stage. So just, some fun graphics. I always think the pictures are kind of fun, just for the hydrology model, we use soils and land use and the terrain to determine the flows. And then we use some Eagle flood flows to help us do some calibration. We're finalizing the report. And then just a little bit more of like what we do with the survey data is we basically have all of the LiDAR data, which is, the above water. And so then we survey the below water portion of the cross sections, and you can see then we merge the two together. So you get one continuous terrain that you can then add different cross sections to make the model more robust. And we'll also start adding in the road crossing information, the height of the roads, the culvert sizes, all of that information. And so then that's our next step right now. So that was basically all I had. I'm happy to take, any questions right now. I hope that was a good mix of a little bit technical, but not too much.
That was great. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, the one thing we've talked about for a while is we capture levels, we capture pressures and things like that, but ultimately at the end of the day, to me, the answer is, what is the actual volume of water over time? How fast is water coming into the lake and over what period of time? And if we know that, then you kind of have an answer as to the dynamics of how it's acting. So that's where we've always been trying to get, and I can see your data doing a lot there.
Yeah, we've done what we can with, the data we have. We're a little bit shy on field data, but, you can always take these models and, if you continue collecting data, you can update them yourselves and continue to calibrate even, after we're done. Because again, these are all free models. Anyone can download them from our website and run them.
Thank you.
It was an excellent presentation, Catherine.
Oh, thank you.
I have a quick question for you, Catherine. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Deanna. Were you going to ask a question, Deanna?
No, I'm just congratulating her. I thought it was an excellent presentation. Very interesting.
Yes, myself also. So, Catherine, you had mentioned you're using, I don't know what the right term is, but the only gauge I know of is down here at the Hamburg Road Bridge. And so you're up in the Dubrova Lake watershed coming down here, and there's no gauging or anything. That's what I got out of it. And you were using other methods to get water level changes and things, just to make sure I understood. Did I hear you correctly on that?
So we don't have any gauges that provide flow.
Yes.
The gauges I know that you guys haven't installed provide water levels. And but without a velocity component, I can't really convert a water level into like volume.
Yeah.
So what we did is we took a look. So when people request, they're going to do permits from Eagle. Eagle will provide some flow rates, for like the 1% annual chance exceedance flood, all the different flood flows that FEMA does, and then also some of the other ones. So we took a look at where Eagle has previously provided flows throughout the watershed, and we then ran our model, our hydrology model for the same time, like for the 1% annual chance rainfall, to make sure, if Eagle's only expecting like 600 CFS at this road crossing and our model is showing like 1200 CFS, well, there's probably something wrong, because I don't think they should be that far off. So we did some, calibration of some of the parameters to at least get into the same ballpark as what Eagle has previously calculated themselves to what the expected flows should be. And since a lot of areas of the watershed, I haven't seen there's been development, of course, but it's not like you went from 100% farm fields to it's all urban. So we kind of felt like the Eagle flows were probably pretty good, and we were shooting for something similar. We're never going to get anything exactly the same, but at least in the same ballpark.
How does one measure the flow? There's special apparatus you have to hook up?
Yeah. So what we in the Corps here at Detroit, we actually do flow monitoring for a number of locations. If you want like the top end, very expensive is acoustic flow monitoring that, like the USGS does. We also do that for some locations. We do have some other less expensive type flow gauges. I'll have to double check on this. I'm not a gauging expert. I just kind of know what the other guys in the office are doing.
I don't want to do a
There's
deep dive. I'm just
there's a number of different flow meters. We use them in engineering, and it depends on your application. But there's ways. I know that where our gauges are, that Amber Diane we've all selected, we would put them in the creeks. We can get water levels at those specific locations, and if we knew the cross-sectional area, and you looked at the rate of change of height, you might be able to come up with sort of a crude flow, but it would be it would be in small sections.
It'd be a lot easier with a flow meter.
We need your money, Bill.
What that?
We need your money.
Yeah.
So we do have some flow meters in place in the Rouge River for another project. So I can I'll make a note and I can ask Matt on what those are and how much those tend to cost. I know they're not super expensive. And also there's another company out there whose name is escaping me at the moment.
We used to use a company called
It was started by a professor at U of M. Okay, I will check on that.
Yeah, find out because we use a company called Max Flow Meters, and they're pretty accurate, not terribly expensive, about $400 a piece.
Yeah, we're looking at we're working with Macomb County to possibly install some gauges, and they're going to have to pay for some of it. So they were looking at a company, high flow, something or other.
Yeah.
And those guys will actually, for a relatively inexpensive price, well, I mean, it's all relative, but considering, how much like acoustic flow gauges that the USGS installs, how much those cost, these were like $3,500, I think. And then they would you could even have them do all the maintenance and the data would be uploaded to their website. So I can find out the name of that company as well, because they might be able to do something for you.
Yeah, that'd be helpful just to get the contact info. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I'm done with my question. Thank you so much, Catherine. I won't put you on the spot anymore on that. Okay.
That's okay.
Thanks, Bill.
It's nice to hear that the model is going to be handed over, to Amber, I suppose, and so if there's additional, what we would call good data that can be input to it, to override some of the assumptions, just more data you have, the better output.
The model gets smarter the more you put into it. Yep.
Yeah. I'm always happy to turn the models over to communities who can kind of, take it and continue working with it. Cause, we only have so much funding to take it so far. Yeah. And so we did kind of the same thing up in the Antrim County area where we built a set of models for the whole chain of lakes up near Traverse City. And they've got folks who are like, oh, we're going to take it and do all this stuff. And so, I'm always happy to see people make it better because we do what we can with the money we have. And then I always like it when people can make improvements.
Thank you,
Catherine.
Yep. So thank you. I'm gonna mute myself here now. So
does anyone else have any other questions for Catherine before she probably bounces out? Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. This was really wonderful for you to offer your time to come share. We appreciate it. So
thanks everyone for having me. Yeah, I'm gonna head out now, but
thank you.
You guys have a good one. We'll be in touch. Bye.
Yep, definitely. Wonderful. All right.
Yeah.
So that was great to have her come join in here. So we'll look forward to hopefully hearing from them again and probably in the spring, most likely, once we get some more information and hopefully have that model finished to be able to hear what that looks like. So more to come as that continues. So another one of our projects that we do, and many folks here have worked on this or have heard about it, but for those that haven't, one of the things we do is we also work with a local high school. And they are an alternative high school in Howell called Innovation Academy. And the great thing there, it's a kind of a two-part win in a sense, because we get the support from the students as they're actually trying to investigate one of the local streams around here, Dubrova Creek, which is one of two creeks that flows into Ore Lake and then the Huron River. That creek has had less study, less investigation as to what's going on, the size of the watershed, where all the water's coming from, what's changing there with all the development and so on. And so we've been able to start working with the students to actually start investigating that creek, but also start looking at development upstream. We have Jay McDowell on the call, who's one of the teachers that we work with there at the high school. He's also son of Deanna McDowell, who's in our community as well, who got us in touch. So thank you, Deanna, for starting that relationship going. But actually what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Lena Zilkowski, who is a former student from Innovation Academy, who presented back maybe a year ago at this point, Lena. I can't quite remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was about a year, I think.
It was, yeah, but since then we've had a chance, I've had the wonderful chance to continue to work with Lena, and she's here to share about that.
Hi, so yes, I'm Lena. And if you didn't know, in senior year of high school, I'm now in college, but in senior year, I was asked to look at ArcGIS, the program, which is if you guys don't know, it's a mapping program where you can like look at like the maps of like all like the different, you can use layers, and specifically what I looked at is development and wetlands and land use changes on the map, specifically within the watershed that, goes into Ore Lake. And so with ArcGIS, I was looking at specifically development changes between the years 2000 and 2021. So if it like increased or decreased throughout those years, and also wetlands changes. There's different types of wetlands like herbaceous wetlands and woody wetlands, and seeing if those increased or decreased or changed, and with that data, we actually, about like a year and a half ago, we decided to start working on a scientific paper about my results and my study. And it was, we drafted that for like about a year and submitted it to the Journal of Student Research. And just within like the past week or so, we found out that it got accepted and it gone through. And so we're just waiting for revisions right now, but hopefully we'll get it published, which is really exciting.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a video here that goes kind of deeper into specifically what I did. So I'll share my screen and put that up. If you guys can see that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me know if there are any audio issues or anything.
We can't hear the video of your voiceover from it. Do you want to
Oh, really?
talk? Yeah, that's okay. Maybe instead of playing the whole video, do you just want to kind of talk through what it is, or did you want to play the whole thing?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can just kind of like use this because I don't have the map open right now.
Yeah.
That's
So basically here, if I go into here, it's kind of hard to see, but this is kind of the outline of the watershed. This is Ore Lake right here. And this is like the outline.
Wow.
Later on, I had it highlighted. It's just not in that video. And if you can look at this key right here,
can I just jump in real quick just for a second, just to give
Yes.
some context? So
Yes.
this is the South Ore Creek watershed. So all that red in the middle is the city of Brighton.
Yes.
So this is the development changes around the city of Brighton and within that whole watershed. So I'm sorry, Lena,
Right
I just
here.
want to give
Yeah,
context. Go
you're
for it.
good. So yeah, so the key kind of like shows, what colors, show what. So you can see on the side to the right that there's like pink. The pink is mainly development, and the darker the pink, the higher the intensity is. So you can see, for example, there it's very intense where there's like a road, like where there's a highway, or like where Brighton is specifically, because there's a lot of buildings there.
So Lena, I'm
And
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
yes,
when you say intensity, is that equatable to density of non-absorptive, concrete and buildings, that kind of, so
I'm
does
pretty
that,
sure. Yeah.
that equates to density of buildings, if you will, or hard surface?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it does. Yep.
Okay. Yes. And then so I looked at, mainly the intensity, or what you said, density of that.
Sorry.
You're good. And I also looked at specifically woody wetlands and emergent herbaceous wetlands. And you can see that at the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor moving, but yeah, so woody wetlands is like the lighter green. It's more like this kind of green. And then the emergent herbaceous wetlands is like, so this is light green, and this is like the light blue is the herbaceous wetlands. And so I first started off by just looking at it, just overall within the watershed. And then I decided it's a lot of information, there's a lot of stuff going on at once. So I decided to split it up into sections. Oh, just like so. So I later on sectioned it A, B, C, and D, but we have kind of like a line here, just to divide them just so it's easier on the eye. And you can see all of these circles as well. And these circles represent specific, like, kind of when I see like a certain type of change, I circled it just so I could go back to it. So if I get closer here, you can see the circles. This is when it's easier kind of to have the video because it kind of shows it in real time. But this red one, for an example, I kind of showed first the year 2001, and then I switched it to 2021, and you can see that some pink appeared. So from this, I decided to categorize red into development going in, or development appearing into wetlands. So there's, again, there's just wetlands right here. I mean, there's a little bit of development, but there's some wetlands, and then you can see some development appear into the wetlands. And so that's what the red circle represented.
Wow.
And
So if you run this video over time, can you watch the evolution of those areas that you've defined? You can actually see that?
yeah.
You started in 2000, right? So
Yes, 2000.
so it's roughly a 10-year span, and if we were to run the video, you could watch the evolution of these areas, if you will.
Yeah, that is true. Specifically, just for, my study, I just looked at the year 2001 and 2022. But
Sure.
yeah, you can like look at all the other years in between as well. And let me see. So the next one, which one did I do next? Which color circle? I think it was, is it the, let's see, the black one? Okay, so yeah, so for the black one, this is development appearing, but only appearing, just not going into the wetlands, but kind of just increasing around the wetlands. So you can see in the year 2001, or 2000, sorry, or technically it's 2001, just 12/31/2000. Anyways, so there's, some development surrounding this wetland right here. And then when I go to 2021, the intensity increased a little bit. So yeah, 2001 and then 2021 right there.
So another question, when you're
Yes.
saying development, this isn't development of gross or wetlands, this is actually hardscape development, or how is that defined, I guess?
Yeah, so the pink is specifically, you know, like man-made, unnatural
Okay.
development.
That-
And the
that-
wetlands is like, you know,
Yeah.
the natural, yeah.
So that's the
Um,
red there. Somebody built stuff there, is what you're saying.
yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
hmm
Sorry
And
to
then,
interrupt.
yeah, you're good. And then finally, I made a blue circle, which was specifically changes with the wetlands and not with the development. So if I go here, this is the year 2021, or no, sorry, 2001. And then oh, wait, is it? What am I doing here? Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. The video tricked me. All right. So no, this is the year 2021, you know, so we have some herbaceous wetlands right here, which is the light blue, and some woody wetlands, which is the light green. And then when I go down to 2001, it kind of changes a little bit.
Wow.
There's some of that right there.
Hmm.
And that's basically what I did. And then by the end, after like finding everything that I was able to see, I counted each circle and, you know, calculated that to see, you know, how much development increased and how much wetlands changed, that kind of stuff. And you know, this video is actually a little outdated. Yeah, 2022, because while we were starting to work on this, was like I think I did this like right before I started drafting the scientific paper. So as we were getting into scientific paper, we found I had to actually, it was a little more complicated, and I kind of started, I have like now different colors, and I counted specifically the pixels of the changes. Rather than just counting the circles, I counted the pixels within the circles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really excited though. I'm really glad that I was able to get this done, and we're heading to publishing the paper, which is great.
This is great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, can you, where is Ore Lake? Can you point to
Yes,
that real
so
quickly again?
Ore
Okay,
Lake
I
is
see it
right
now.
down here.
I got you.
Yeah,
So
it was kind
we're
of cut off in the video.
no, that's okay. We're way north. So this is, which is the subject, right? Is it north?
Yeah.
Is that north? North, it's the watershed
Yeah,
coming
Yeah.
into the lake, right?
this is the
So-
South Oak Creek watershed, so all of the water flowing into us in Ore Lake.
And so first of all, that's a lot of good information, and I'm sure that took a long time to accumulate all of that data. Okay, so well done.
Thank you.
What I see, what you just presented to us is, because you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but I was under the impression that wetlands were protected to some degree. And so when developers come in, they're tasked with protecting certain amount of wetlands, or even reproducing wetlands in different locations. You know, a good example of that would be in the Walled Lake area several years ago, where they basically changed everything.
Mhm.
So what I've noticed is, so when you look at your pictures here, the wetland stream, or what you say what was that term you used for the vegetative wetlands? What I would call the real wetlands?
Herbaceous or
Herbaceous. There you go. That's the word. And then
woody.
the woody is the less wetland, where you're gonna get willows and the popples and so forth growing. So I see no change there, but all around I see development. And so the question is how much hardscape is really there?
Yeah.
It's hard to calculate that. Did that ever, when you get this, where are you getting this data from? Is it population data? You know, the red colors. What's your data source?
I use specifically ArcGIS. It's
Okay.
a layer from the program. I could look
I'm
up
not sure what that is, so
specifically
I don't know.
So ArcGIS is a software that is basically a map and you can look at like anywhere on the map, like, you know, anywhere in the world pretty much. And the software contains layers that you can add on. So for an example, this right here, you know, all of the development and the wetlands is called a layer. And you can also look at elevation, for example, and even just like satellite imagery.
I see.
And I think the layers are I could be wrong about this, but they're created by other people.
Lena, do you want me to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. You're doing a great job figuring it out.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
So
I've
these are
not
layers.
spoken to you before.
These are called LiDAR layers. So these are actually planes through actually the US
all right.
Geological Survey. One of them, I think it's USGS, is the one who actually flies planes, and actually they get LiDAR data, which is where they're like shooting it down, right, to actually identify the land uses. So these are land cover maps, and they actually input those maps into ArcGIS, and then Lena was able to upload those maps into this region and kind of layer on the different ArcGIS LiDAR areas.
Area Google, kind of.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so LiDAR is detecting hardscape then? Is that your opinion, Amber? That's what
I don't know the exact technology they're using, so I couldn't tell exactly what they're detecting, but yes, they're basically detecting land use. So they're able to distinguish different types of vegetation, different types of land use. Like in this, you can see all the different colors. The yellow, I believe, is like a prairie that's there. So you're getting like lots of different land use. And when Lena zoomed in and you saw those
neighborhoods, so would be my suspicion.
Right. When she zoomed in, you might have been able to see little squares. Those are called she referred to them as pixels. That's, I think, like a 3x3 meter or something like that. And so it's a particular size because based on US government requirements, they're not able to get particular, like super detailed for safety reasons, obviously. And so that's what you're working with. So all of those are calculated based on that LiDAR mapping as they fly over.
Right.
Based
Can I
on
ask
that.
a question?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, Lena, you mentioned you were counting pixels per color in those particular circled areas. Did you arrive at any, it sounds like you have some numbers on this that you're submitting in the paper. Did you arrive at any conclusions number-wise as to like a percentage of growth or percentage of I'm not sure what kind of number you'd be deriving for this.
Yes. So actually, let me quickly pull up because I do. I just gotta look back on it because I don't have it fully memorized or anything.
But while you're looking it up, do you want me to share a little bit?
This is really to William's point is from the legal standpoint. I'm not a lawyer either, but if you have some hard numbers as to land usage that may exceed the legal limits of wetland development, I'm sure there are limits. There's probably some variance that developers get as they do this, but as a sum total of land development, there may be a legal limit. And if you can show numerically that you've exceeded that, then there would be, I'm not sure what you'd do about that, but that would be worthwhile knowing for sure.
If I may, discussing the limits of land use, yes, there's a legal proposal or rule that says if you buy so many acres that have wetlands, you have to either create wetlands somewhere else, or cement your place and and put some lakes in it. That doesn't mean that in downtown Brighton somebody's going to make a lake.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, Lena, do you have, what are your numbers? Just curious.
Yes. So again, this was kind of like, just like a rough outline of what I, did. When I was writing the paper, I kind of went more in depth, specifically about like the development changes, for example, like development appearing into wetlands, development changing around the wetlands, changes in the wetlands itself, development going into the lake. So overall, sorry,
Lena, do
I
you want me
think
to
we
jump
also
in?
have to.
yeah,
also have-
okay.
Okay, so let me jump in for a second. So Tony, you're asking a phenomenal question.
Yes.
So this paper is actually gonna, it's been accepted. So, and the great thing, it's been accepted in a completely open access journal. So once it's actually out for publication, you'll be able to see it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and to be honest, I don't think the numbers are going to be particularly helpful because we're just going to be throwing percentages at you. But what I will say, what's unique about what Lena did is that not only she started with this, but then when she's actually going through the depth of the work, she actually was able to find patterns. And do you remember how she talked about dividing the watershed into those regions?
Yeah.
She was able to see patterns in how the land use changed in each of those regions. So for example, in one of them, and I'd have to pull it up exactly, and we can talk about that at another, like later if you want. But like in one of those cases, the wetland type didn't actually change, or we lost one that we weren't anticipating. And so there was actually like unique and surprising changes in each of the different regions. And that's kind of what comes out mostly in the paper. I can, when we're like in a moment, as other people are asking questions, we can try and throw a little bit of data into the chat, but I don't want to necessarily throw numbers at you because I don't think that in this particular moment is going to be that informative. I think once the paper's out, we're definitely going to share it with everyone and you'll be able to see that data more exactly.
Well,
Okay.
plus in this meeting, you're
Yeah.
talking about an immense amount of land mass to talk about these numbers. So it's, you would
Right.
need to go off and read this for a while. But
Right.
to do it here in a 5-minute session is going to be like overwhelming.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean,
like how she's zeroed in on areas of interest.
Yeah.
Um,
But if you want to understand it comprehensively, you'd have to kind of go across and look at these things and see what changed where, Tony.
So
Right,
I
I
look
agree.
forward to seeing your paper, Lena. So
Thank you so
hopefully,
much.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
Amber will make sure that it's available for
Yeah.
our perusal when it's published. So
Thank you.
congratulations
Thank
on
you.
your work. Well done.
Thank you so
Okay?
much.
So
Well done.
Lena, can you stop sharing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also, I'm going to have to head out because I got something in 10 minutes, but it was so great talking to you guys and hearing what you guys had to say. And I really like this. So
Well,
Yeah.
we've heard a lot about you, so now it's finally nice to meet you and see the data. So thank you.
all right,
Well
thank
done.
you.
Yes.
All right, see ya.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lena. So just as like a one final point, Tony, to your question, I did glance real quick at the back in the paper. Not surprisingly, the general finding is that the intensity of the development increased over the entire time that she was looking at it. But one point that I found particularly interesting is that development encroaching into wetlands occurred mostly in the southern sections just north of Ore Lake.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a very poignant finding that like directly north of us, we're getting more development into the wetlands. So and again, the paper's going to be out. We will share it. You'll get to read all the details in it, but that was a kind of a unique and fairly important finding of hers.
I have I'll say a myth that I will tell you because I've been here many years.
Yes.
Is Maltby Road used to be dirt. Okay, and between Brighton Lake Road, the four corners there in Maltby Road, out to Rickett Road, used to be very sparsely populated. There wasn't a school there. There wasn't any. This goes a long ways back. Okay, there was never any flooding. And then things progressed. She didn't look prior to 2000. All right, but if you go 1980 to 2021, I think you're gonna fall over. All right, and so that data. But so I always used to say we got that big flood in 2004, which I don't know. Is anybody online other than Deanna that experienced that? Just
Diane
out of
did.
curiosity.
Yeah,
What's that?
Diane and other folks here have, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I was here too. And I know that they paved Maltby Road, and I always said, well, that's interesting. They paved Maltby Road, and a few years later, we had the gigantic flood of the century. But very obviously, it wasn't just that. There's a lot of hard service, but at least from my perspective, all of that development back in that region certainly has something to do with it, in my opinion. Whether anyone else will believe us, but this is what you guys are trying to point out. But it correlates to my myth. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yes, it definitely, it supports a lot of what we were guessing at or hypothesizing at, certainly. And the great thing about what she did is this is a starting point. So this is, in a sense, it's a qualitative study of using ArcGIS to actually investigate land use changes in that watershed. The students at the high school, their next step actually, now they have access to full ArcGIS, because what she used was the free version, which didn't actually give you numbers in a sense. She figured out numbers, but it didn't actually include the numbers of actual like changes in the direct influence on flooding. The students are going to be working with ArcGIS to actually calculate that across the watershed. So that's going to be another set of work that's going to be coming out in the future. So that's kind of forthcoming in that work. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. What I want to do, we have two other people just to kind of quickly hear from. When we had the most recent flood in August, for many of you on this call, not everyone, but most people here, I think, did see a big push to try and get folks to post on iflood.org, which that is a site that allows us to collect data on where the water is on your property at different types of different water levels, because we're trying to push back on the township who and whatnot, where the flood level was changed back in 2021 to go from 6.5 to 7 feet. But we can't push back on that to try and bring it back down to 7.5 feet unless we have data. So we've been using iFlood to actually capture that data to try and say, no, really, when it's 6.5 feet, look, my property is actually flooded. But we have to be able to show that. And so Carrie has been kind of leading that effort to collect that data and coordinating with Woods Hole Oceanographic to actually coordinate the use of the site. They've been kind enough to let us actually pilot it and it's our data they're sharing exactly with us and no one else. So I'm going to turn over to Carrie, who has a moment to kind of chat a little bit about that data collection, how well it went, and kind of next steps.
It went very well. We've probably got about a half dozen locations around the lake that people took. And even Bob Sifton, who took the opportunity to walk parts of the neighborhood and take photos from other locations that weren't just his house. There's 136 entries in the data. Probably 75 of them are during the entire flood event this year. So there's going to be a lot of data with photographs and with actual level data that we've taken from our witch sticks. So if you guys know what those are, they're the level gauges around the lake. That also includes the level gauge at the river that Bill talks about that we all use. So we now have photographs with the level gauge that the township relies on, with our own level gauges on this lake, and we can put all that together as a pitch to go back to the township and say, look, you said 7 feet, here's what's going on at 6, at 6.5, at 7, at 7.5. And the pictures are very convincing that raising it to 7 feet was probably the wrong way to go. So I believe we have enough evidence in the iFlood data this year to do what Amber had originally liked to do, is gather enough information to go back to the township and push back. So I believe we have that.
Carrie,
Great.
I've downloaded all that information from Woods Hole with Britt Robbenheimer, who I work with there, and I've got copies of that spreadsheet now that I can start processing. Go ahead, Dave.
Carrie, when do you think you'll present that to the township?
Oh, I need a few weeks to sort of regress the whole mess, because if it was just numbers in a spreadsheet, I could do that in an hour. But the problem is every entry has a photograph.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to put that together where you can say level, date, photograph, here's what it is. Level, date, photograph, here's what it is. So it's a much more sort of graphically intensive thing to put a report together that somebody can look at and go, oh, I understand what that says. So I'm trying to make it blatantly simple, but in a few weeks, I would imagine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so it's multi-step. So Carrie's going to take time. Thank you, Carrie, for going through the data and compiling it in a way that's useful. But then the next step actually is to pull together a report to give to the township. That show, because what we it's not just data that we have to show. We have to then map in a sense that data onto the National Weather Service categorizing of minor flooding. They have particular descriptions of what minor flooding looks like, which is what a flood level is, minor flooding. And so we have to then say, look, these are the descriptions of the National Weather Service that says minor flooding. Here's all the photographic data that says aligned to this river level at 6.5 feet. We're already hitting all of those bullet points for minor flooding. So we have to kind of map not just the data, but onto the National Weather Service categorization.
Yeah, we have
So that's gonna take
correlate
some
the
time.
ordinance.
My guess, honestly, Deanna, is it's gonna be a few months before we'll be
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
ready to take that on with the township. But and it's gonna take conversations. This isn't really something that we just walk into the township board meeting one day and say, hey, guess what, change it. Like, we need to
Yeah.
actually have the conversations and prep them and go through this process. But
Right.
we are
Sure.
gonna do it, and we'll keep that as like very transparent with everyone as possible, like, so everyone's involved. Everyone could be there, should be there, right, when we have those conversations. So
Yeah.
We will post
more to
everything
come,
beforehand.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
people can-
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, my other question is, did they harvest before we had this
Yes.
flood?
Yes.
They did.
Yes, they harvested at the end of July. They did not, and I don't believe anyway, Mark, you can correct me, but I don't believe they did the river cleanup this year, but they did do the harvesting. In fact, what we did, the great thing about all our data collection is we actually have data now to show that when they harvested, they saw in the river gauge that the river went down 10.8 inches after the harvesting, and our lake went down 7.2 inches, I believe. Is that right, Carrie?
I have all that data, and right after that flood event, right when it was at about what they call 7 feet, or we were at about 48 inches on our witch sticks, it was going down almost 3 inches every 36 hours. That was a rate that I've never seen it do. So that was really incredible. And it was right after the harvest. Now, I don't know if they ever harvested again. Maybe Mark
No,
knows.
they don't. They harvest one
Okay,
time a
and
year.
so, because I can tell you right now, Bill maybe know, you walk down to that culvert right now, that water's dead stalled. It's not moving.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
They only harvest one time a year. It's expensive, but we're at least they are harvesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have the data to show that it did make a difference. But I mean, to be honest, had they not harvested, we would have been higher than we were in August 2021 based on the
True.
data we have. So that's good at least. But
Yeah.
obviously we still flooded even after the harvesting. So that's not the one end all be all solution to all this.
No.
No.
Hence why we're doing all this. Okay,
Mm-mm.
so we have only 1 minute left. I just wanted to say real quick, one of the other projects that we have going on is to support homeowners who are interested to try and raise and elevate their homes out of flood level, to try and get FEMA grant funding to actually help people raise their homes. Mark has been leading that effort. Mark, do you want to just jump in just real quick, a quick update on that?
Yeah, there was a target for the FEMA grant to be submitted in January. What we really would like to do is get some engineering drawings put together for each house, and then also a more detailed cost for raising each house. We've got some good leads on trying to get that work done, but we would not meet the January timeline. I did send an email out to the 14 people that want to be on this application for 23 and let them know that we're not going to be on it for 23. We're going to target January of 24. One of the big issues
25.
or 25.
25. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. We're trying for 24. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So yeah, so we're targeting January of 25. And then that will give us some time. We don't have any funding to get this work done. It is a lot of work to create engineering drawings and to come up with construction costs for each house. So it's been difficult to try to get people to do that. We've got some good leads. People are talking that they can get that work done, but we're not going to have it done for January of 24. And so we talked to the Pat Hole and the township, and they agreed too that it would be better if we waited until the following year to submit that the FEMA grant. And we've had people drop off and people add on. So if you know anybody that's interested in the FEMA grant process, we can explain that more to them. But yeah, we do have a 1 year delay on this right now.
So
Well,
kind of a
still-
backstory real quick, we did submit those grants in January of 22 and we did not get move forward in the process. And if we had submitted this time around, it would have been pretty much the exact same application, which didn't sound very productive. And so we want to make sure we're submitting a much stronger, more competitive application, hence the waiting a year to get the data and the information and the drawings and all of that we need. So we actually are competitive and have a much more likely chance that FEMA will consider us.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
that's-
Thanks for your efforts, Mark.
yes, thank
Yep.
you all.
Mm.
So with that, we are at time and I want to honor people's time. So we will go ahead and call the meeting at this point. However, I am more than happy to stay on chat with folks, answer questions, hear concerns, all of those things. But I do want to say thank you all so very much for coming. Our next meeting is going to be also on Zoom because it's winter and people are all over the place. We're going to do December 14th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And at that point, we'll be sharing, we won't have the Army Corps come, but I'll be sharing some information from the Huron River Watershed Council because I serve as the Hamburg Township board, representative on their board of directors. So I'll come with some information there, and we'll continue to give updates on our project and also hear from all of you. So
Big day
have a
tomorrow.
lovely evening. And
Big
oh
day
yeah, so
tomorrow.
a big day tomorrow. We are removing the gauges tomorrow. So yay for that, calling it for the season, and then we'll start again in the spring. So. All right. Thank you all. It's good to see you.
Hey.
Feel free to stay on, ask questions, all of that, but you'll have a lovely evening.
Thanks,
you.
Amber.
Thanks, Amber, very much. Very informative.
Good. I'm glad.
You're a great neighbor.
Oh, thanks, Kevin.
Hey,
So,
Amber, I have
Yeah.
a couple of alerts.
please, yes,
Couple of Tony alerts. There's trees down.
there are.
There's
Okay.
a huge tree